bring it back up here, folks. Welcome them back up.
I'm getting it now.
So, just kind of here for the next part of our program here. We're going to walk through a little bit about Jeremy's career not only as a major league player, but certainly even growing up and so forth. And, his history of baseball and his career as well, and hopefully hit a lot of the good points there, and hopefully shed some light on the not just the successes, but the struggles and the challenges and the things that he experienced kind of along the way that kind of brought him not just to the point that he was as a major leaguer, but certainly to where he is today. So, who he is not as a major league player, but certainly as a person as well, which is important, particularly as we deal with a lot of, here, obviously we're here for a lot of young kids and young baseball players, and we're not just raising professional players, but we're raising people. So, and the types of things that we're trying to instill in those kids aren't just the skill part of it, but certainly the character part of it as well, and all the things that baseball teaches us that have to do with life, have to do with living life. So, but Jeremy, again, thank you for being here with us today. But maybe to kind of start this off and so forth, I know you were born in Arizona. Certainly, you talked about kind of living all over the Pacific and the West as the son of a soldier in the Air Force. But what was your favorite place growing up?
Oh man, favorite place. That was tough. Let's see. I loved Guam. I love but I love Guam for a lot of different reasons. I love Guam because it was in my impressionable years. It was second, third, and fourth grade. So I learned how to play sports over there. I learned how to be patient because we would get games like 2 weeks later. So you would not know who won a football game or a baseball game because you had to wait. It was in the 80s. So you had to wait. But I loved it for a few reasons. One, I learned to have fear in Guam, which I think is sometimes healthy. So I was almost attacked by a hammerhead shark there. And so I ended up having a fear of sharks, which I was a scuba diver and I got on a plane so that I could find sharks, get over my fear. But I also learned to travel. I got to travel around the Orient. I got to see Thailand. I got to see Japan. I got to see Korea. I just got to see a lot as a kid, and places that it was easy. When my dad was an officer, we could take these little jumps out of Anderson Air Force Base into those countries a lot easier than I could from here. And my dad wouldn't have been able to afford it. So I got to experience a lot of the travel as well, learned a lot of history of World War II especially. And so I really enjoyed that. And then probably my other favorite place to live probably was, I like being in Washington as a high school kid. I grew up playing sports. I still have friends from there, but I like being in the mountains as well.
Now I know eventually you ended up in the Northwest, up there in the Spokane area, and you ultimately would start in baseball at Northwest Christian High School up there. Was there a time along the way, kind of there in high school, where you felt like, all right, maybe I can do this professionally, or I can be this, or was there something that somebody told you, somebody communicated to you, or something that you just kind of knew and so forth, kind of along that way, that gave you the impression that maybe it could end up being a career?
Yeah, so when I got to Spokane, it was in my high school years. So my dad retired from the military. We were living in Merced here, and he retired because we were at Castle, which at that time was the top gun of the Air Force. He was an instructor. He's a bomber for B-52. So he was an instructor. He retired, and he wanted to move us back. He's from Minnesota. He loved Washington. We were there in the early 80s because we were actually stationed there real early in my life the first time, and then went to Guam. And so after he retired, he moved us back. So it was a weird time for me because now I'm a high school kid trying to find my way. And I was like all these young kids here, man. I love playing sports. It was a fun thing for me to do. I enjoyed it. I played all the sports. I loved everything about it. And I get to this school, and it's a small school, K through 12. There's like 500 people. It's a private school, and they were a good sports school. They were like one of those smaller schools that was private, but they were really good athletes. And so now I'm walking into good soccer players, great basketball. They're state champions. They would go to state every year. Baseball team was struggling a little bit, but it still was a really good, well-rounded sports school. So this kid coming in, wanting to play sports, it was hard for me. And so basketball was a hard sport for me to play. I really wanted to play it. I was kind of pushed out because they have their little cliques, and they wouldn't let me in. It was the weirdest deal. But then all of a sudden, my freshman year baseball season came around, and I found my niche because I started playing well. So there's my self-confidence came in, and I think that's when I kind of got some of my self-confidence back because I was doing something well and I was executing well, and then I was going through, and as I developed to an athlete, and that's what I've kind of realized with a lot of these young athletes, and I've even talked to my sons about this, you don't really know who your sons are going to be or your daughters are going to be yet. You don't. You do not know at their age how good they're going to be. They could be really good right now. The problem is if they think they got an easy streak, someone's going to pass them up because someone's going to be a late bloomer. So I tell my sons, like, never think that you're that good. Always try to get yourself better at whatever you do. Just try it, get better. My oldest son was a very big kid his whole life. But because he was big, he wasn't very athletic. He didn't think he'd be an athlete. All of a sudden his freshman year, something clicked, and now he's 6'5", 250-pound offensive lineman that's being looked at, and he was like the worst athlete in the family, And I'm like, what just happened? And so, like, that kind of was me. I kind of, like, kept going. I didn't give up just because maybe I wasn't that good then. I wanted to compete. I wanted to play. I was always a competitor. And then my junior year, all of a sudden I started throwing high 80s, low 90s with a fastball. I became a really good basketball player. Gonzaga asked me to quit baseball to play basketball, and I had to make a choice. And I chose to be a baseball player, obviously. But I kind of knew then, but it was kind of that, I was a cocky high schooler. I mean, I just was. Yeah, and that's why I try to encourage my sons, don't do that. It's just not smart, But it's more the cockiness was my confidence. I just didn't know how to harness it in. And once I learned that, it was perfect for me. But I kind of knew then I wanted to be a professional. I always kind of loved professional baseball, but that's not what I do.
Did your parents ever have to deal with the challenges you have in Big Head because of that?
Yeah. You know what? My mom and dad are pretty awesome. My dad, so they never got too high or too low. I didn't go to any private instruction. Because my dad was Air Force and my mom was a teacher, they were very median income family. They didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't get to go do all kinds of private camps. I just played whatever city baseball there was, right? And so I did that. But even when I was getting good, my dad would always sit there and he'd watch me play, and he never really was like yelling at referees. He never yelled at umpire. My parents never did anything. My parents just sat and watched the game. And whether I had a good or bad game, if I had a good game, Dad would always give me a high five, whatever, and say nice job. And in high school when I was driving, he'd always just smack me on the butt and say, I'll see you at home. I'm like, all right. And if I had a bad game, he'd be like, man, bummer. There was never, and then I'd come home, I'd be mad, he'd sit with me and say, okay, let's talk it out. But when it came to the big-headedness, I had really good coaches. And I had a basketball coach that benched me because I got a technical foul when I shouldn't have. And he said, you get one more of those, you're off my team. And I was all-state player. But he benched me. He wasn't afraid to do it. You see coaches now, they're afraid to do it. He's like, oh, he's my best player. I had coaches that weren't afraid to do it. I had another high school coach who, when I retired, I brought him to the retirement ceremony here because he was, of all the coaches that I had, even in professional baseball, he was one of the best coaches I've ever had. And as a high school coach, he knew the game better than some of these professional coaches. And I remember I talked about one time, he grabbed me by my collar, he put me into the fence, and he said, don't ever do that again, don't talk to me like that, don't show anybody up, and he made me run. And I was like, yes sir. You know, like, he kind of showed that, he didn't care. So I had a lot of people around me that was like, we're not gonna just let you be like this because you're good. We're gonna still teach you to be a leader. You gotta learn to respect the game and respect people. So I had some good influences around me.
You know, you come out of high school, you get drafted by the Kansas City Royals in the 3rd round, but you also got a scholarship offer from Gonzaga. Now I know a lot of parents think about, well, what would it take for my kid to allow them to go professional versus sending them to college on a scholarship, and what for you was the biggest factor in choosing to be a professional baseball player at that time versus taking the college route?
Yeah, that was. I talk to parents about this now. Like some of these guys, they're in Texas. It's overboard. Like they all think their kids are gonna go play professional baseball, right? And you're like, man, 1% of 1%. You're rolling the dice that your kid is. Every kid here must be that, you know. But I said, hey, listen. When it comes to professional and college, always think college, always. Because the reality of it is it's not that I would tell any young man in here they can't be a professional baseball player. I'd never say that because I was told that. And I was nothing special. Like I said, I just grew up. There was nothing that I did that was really spectacular. It just happened to be the plan that my life, you know, that God had for my life. So it was like, I don't know, like I just went to play. I always thought about, yes, I can play professional baseball, but I wanted to be a college athlete, and I wanted to do what I could do to become a college athlete. So when Gonzaga they offered me a full ride, I was ecstatic. My parents didn't have any money. My parents were helping my sister pay for her education, and she went to George Fox, so she was at a private school. And I just was happy that I took I was like, I'm just happy I took the pressure off my parents. I don't have to think about anything. I'll just go play. And then when the Royals drafted me in the 3rd round, my mom still wanted me to go to college. She's a teacher, so I can understand that. Your education, you can't guarantee anything. So, and my dad's the one that looked at her and he said, you're gonna let him go. And she said, why? He said, because he can always go back to college, let him choose, and let him fly. Like, whatever he wants to do. Like, and so my dad kind of he's educated, he's a master's degree in communications, he's very, very well educated. And what kind of helped me was, one, I negotiated a contract that paid me a lot of money as a 3rd rounder in 1997. It's not what you're getting now in the 3rd round, but it definitely was good money, plus they paid for my education. So they had said, anytime you're done with baseball, the Royals are on the hook for, well, I think at that time I had negotiated $70,000, which was a full ride back then. Now it's like half the semester, you know. but it was you know, back then it was a lot. And so for me, I was like, that's fine, I'll do that, you know. And so I was okay with that. But the one thing I never did is I never stopped learning. Even when I was in professional baseball, I read all the time. I read a book a week. I like knowledge. I think it's important. So I never stopped doing that. I always educated myself. But for these kids, man, like, you know, I just decided, I think next step. I think middle school, I think high school, I think college. Let cards where they fall where they fall. If it goes the other way, great. But I also tell families, unless you're in the top 5-6 rounds, go to college. Because the team they don't have to do anything with you. If they're invested with you in those first 5 rounds, after that, there's nothing, they don't care about you. In the sense that they don't have time to think about a 15th or 20th round high school kid and giving him chances. They'll cut him his first year. Well, now you just wasted your potential to play 4 years of college, you know, because you took a professional contract. So I always tell parents, you got to have the right rounds and the right money because you got to be invested. If not, go have a great time in college and go get an education and see if you can get a better draft man.
So you end up accepting the world's offer, going into their minor league system. You know, you're in the minors, you're now still a young kid, right? I mean, 19, 20 years old. Did you, now I know the kids won't understand it, the Boulder reference, but you know, did you ever have a new Lelouch moment in the minors where just a welcome to professional ball, meaning just that taking that leap up from playing in a small high school, now all of a sudden you're playing with grown men in the professional ranks?
Yeah, so I gave up, I think like 2 or 3 hits my entire senior year as a pitcher. I didn't give up any hits. I threw a lot of no-hitters. I wasn't playing that tough of school baseball, but I still didn't give up any hits. And I remember going my first game, I get sent to rookie ball in Fort Myers, Florida, and all of a sudden you're looking around and all the kids are like as good as you. And then you start seeing some of these Latin players play and you're like, what? Like, that's a whole other level of athleticism right there. Like, they're really good. And then I gave up 3 hits in the first like 2 innings, and I wanted to go home. Because I'm like, I can give up hits. Oh, I quit. I don't want to give up hits. Like, I didn't know how to fail. So I had opportunities to do that. And then the very next year I went to Lansing, Michigan, and I was the youngest kid in that league. I was 18 years old in A-ball, and most of the kids there were 22 years old. They were men, they'd gone through college already. They're graduated. Some of them were married. I was like, I'm young. Like, that's when I kind of felt like I was maybe out of my league. And I didn't do real well. I got set down. And then it was still a time where I started to just think about, I had to learn that I deserved to be here. Like and any of these kids, I would say the same thing. If they're playing up a division or if they're going to a different level, you tell them the same thing. You're able to play at this level because I don't care how old they are, I don't care how much bigger they are. If you're here, you deserve to be here. When you cross those white lines, you have the skill to be here. Play like it, believe it, go after it like that. Because I had to learn that. Once I figured that out, that allowed me to understand when I got to the big leagues, I'm facing all my heroes. Because I'm 22 years old when I get to the big leagues, so pretty much everybody I faced, I watched on TV. I mean, the first guy I faced was Kenny Lofton. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember you were awesome in the 97 World Series when I was a senior. And it's the first guy I'm facing. Second guy is Frank Thomas. I might have tinkled in my pants a little bit. Really big. And you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's real? I mean, just all these guys, like, you start seeing it, but you come to grips like, wait a minute, if I'm up here, I deserve to be here. Yeah. So that's how I had to start thinking. And I wish I would have had that thought process as an athlete, as young as these guys are here. And it's not cocky. It's just play like you deserve to be here and believe in yourself and go after it. And don't be fearless. You know, like that's what I wish I would have learned then.
So you get up, you're with the Royals now. Obviously, you make your major league debut there against the Chicago White Sox. And, you know, for the majority of the time with the Royals, from April 2002 till mid-2006 when you were traded to the Rockies there, you spent a lot of time going back and forth between being a starter and being a reliever and kind of moving back and forth. And obviously, clearly, you had the stuff there to be in the big leagues. But with all those ups and downs that you had, was there anything for yourself that you see that might have hindered or stunted your potential during those early years to advance in a way that maybe you weren't advancing in quite the way that maybe you had hoped for or expected?
Most of it's mentality. I got hurt in random ways. I had a blister that I would get on my finger that eventually got so bad they had to go in and remove a quarter of my nail completely. So it's permanent still now. Because I would get blisters that were so bad that were, kind of messing with me. So my injuries would mess with my starting scenario. But then you go down, you close, and I love closing. And then you move back to the rotation because they were like, well, you're a left-hander at 23 years of age, throwing 97 miles an hour, you should be starting, So for me, I didn't know which way I should go. I didn't have confidence for my coaches. They didn't know, and if my leaders didn't know, how am I going to know? And I didn't have enough time in the big leagues to be able to say, hey, this is who I should be. And so for me, it took a lot of encouragement. And when I finally figured out who I should be, it was long after the Royals. The Royals were confused in their identity themselves. And I look back and I say, man, I could blame the Royals for, not letting me be a starter. I could blame them for allowing me to get confused on what I was or wasn't. But I actually went back and said, actually, I respect the Royals because I got brought in the big leagues at a young age, and they left me there to learn how to be a pitcher, to learn how to struggle, to learn how to have teachable moments that we call failure. And so for me, I thank them for that. But then when I look at what kind of coach do I want a coach like Bochy, and I had that the reason why I appreciate him so much is he said, this is who you are. This is who you're going to be. These are the roles I'm going to put you in, and I want you in there, and I'm going to put you in there because I think you're the guy to get the job done. And this is the role that you're going to be, and I think you're going to be best at. So when I got this confidence instilled in me from a coach, that allowed me actually to get better. And I'm a grown man. I was 28 years old when I came over to Bochy, or 29 years old, I think, when I came over to Bochy, and it was like, this guy finally gave me some sort of identity in the sense of like, I believe in you, and that allowed me to get better. And so I think about it, that's why I was thanking your coaches today on the field, because these guys, they're so important. What you say to your sons and your daughters is super important to their identity. Giving them that ability to think, even if they have a bad game, still giving them that understanding that they're worth it and they can do it, and just keep grinding out. And it's okay to fail, but let's learn from it. Like, encourage them and give them that confidence. If you sometimes just not being told anything or acting like, you feel like a cancer sometimes. If you fail and then no one even says anything to you, no one wants to look at you, talk to you, be around you. So as parents, sometimes you might not know what to say to your kids, so you're like, or sometimes you just get mad. I've seen these little leagues, these kids your age, I've seen dads yelling at their kids for swinging at something or how do you mess it up, and I walk over to the guy and I'm like, oh, how long did you play? What do you mean? How many years you got in the big leagues? Oh, you didn't make it? So the game's hard. So why are you yelling at your kids? 12. Like, the game's hard. Like, you're gonna mess it up. You obviously couldn't get past high school, buddy. So figure it out. Quit yelling at your kid. You gotta remind people that, but remind your kids that, man, for them to even take that risk, that is what you need to appreciate. And that's what I appreciate about coaching. So that's what I wish I would have had instilled as a Royal. If they would have appreciated me as a starter, I would have had more confidence in what I was doing. And I just didn't know what I was doing. And so I would be a mental midget by the time I was going to pitch the game because I didn't have any confidence.
So I know before you got to go through the Giants there in 2009, obviously you made stops there with the Rockies. You made 2006 to the end of 2007. You made a stop there with the Reds. You signed a one-year contract there in 2008. Was there anything in that kind of inner area there that really helped you to, because I think, I read an interview where you talked about losing your joy for the game when you were with the Royals. Was there anything that kind of happened before the Giants and Bochy came on the scene that kind of helped you to rediscover your joy, rediscover your passion for the game and playing the game? I know we always talk about professionals about like, it's your job, why don't you just do your job, you get paid to do it and all those things, but it seemed like you really kind of were talking more about just, obviously you gotta want to do it, you gotta have joy in whatever you do, whether it's your job or not. So, but
yeah, so I remember my agent called me after 06. I got traded to the Rockies, had a bad overall year with the Royals and Rockies. And it was about the end of 06 that my agent said, I want you to meet this guy named David Cook. And I'm like, okay, because I said he's a sports psychologist. And I'm like, Mike, I don't need a losing is a disease guy. Like losing is a disease, and let's talk about that. Like, he said, no, this guy's awesome. He's the #1 PGA sports psychologist. He was Baylor's sports psychologist when they won the national championship. He was Spurs sports psychologist when they went on the run. He's really good. He lives up in Golden. I want to meet him. And he wrote the book, called The Sacred Journey, which is the movie called 7 Days in Utopia, with Robert Duvall's in it. It's a phenomenal movie. It's a better book. But it's a great story. I sat with him for 3 days, and he said, I want you to read my book, and I'm going to meet with you. So I read the book, I loved it, because golf and baseball are similar in the thought process. And then I got to sit with him in 3 days, and he literally got me to think about my career in the sense of, what do I want? How do you want to have your career? Like, why do you do what you do? And I didn't know I did, but I hated the game. So finally, when I took some time to just think that way, and then Dan O'Dowd for the Rockies said, I'm going to re-up you. I thought they were going to release me. He said, I'm going to sign you back. I was still under their control for a year. So he said, I'm going to give you 1 more year to go into your free agency. I want you to think about being the best left-handed reliever you can possibly be. Don't think about anything else. And so I took David Cook's thoughts on having an understanding of why you do what you do. What is it that you do? Why do you do it? And why would you tell someone to do it? Because I didn't know. If someone said, why do you throw from that arm slot? I had no idea. Or why do you hold a fastball like that? I don't know. I've always thrown a fastball like that. I didn't have a reason for it. And that's what David Cook was trying to do. So I even talked to these younger kids, these 12, 13, 14-year-olds in Bernie. I'm like, I'm going to walk you through this. Why do you hold that fastball like that? Why do you hold that pitch like that? Why do you lift your... I want them to start thinking now. And I started thinking about that, and I flew out to Minneapolis. It was minus 35 degrees, and I met with a pitching coach that I trusted from the Royals, named Mike Mason. And I said, I need you to redo my whole entire delivery. And he's like, how long are you here? I said, I'm here for 10 days. He's like, you want me to redo your entire delivery in 10 days? I said, yeah. And he was like, well, you better be at this gym. So, I mean, it was literally minus 30. It was so cold to get to this. Even walking the car to the gym was miserable. And we took video, and we dropped my arm slot, changed my curveball, did all this stuff. I go into spring training that year and have a great spring, and then we go to the World Series, the Rockies. I pitched in 4 straight World Series games. We lose to the Red Sox. Had my best year ever. Then the Reds signed me the very next year in free agency for a 1-year deal. And I met this guy named David Weathers. We call him Stormy. He had like 16, 17 years in the big leagues. And Stormy was my bullpen mate. And I just remember he looked at me, he's like, you're the hardest throwing BP pitcher I've ever met. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, you throw 97 miles an hour and you're giving up 450-foot bombs. Like, how do you do that? Like, you're not doing something right. I'm like, I'm trying to, he's like, I want you to learn a sinker. I'm like, what? He's like, I want you to throw a sinker from now on. And I'm gonna teach you my sinker. I want you to learn how to throw it with your curveball. I guarantee you your career will change. And I remember going into the second half, I took this sinker, and he worked with me for 1 week, and I go into the game, and he looked at me, and he goes, I don't want to see one four-seam fastball from you, or I'm going to run in from this bullpen myself and slap you in the face. And I was like, all right. He's like, 80%, throw a sinker. I want to see every one of them be a sinker. And I was facing this guy named Lance Berkman. And Lance, really good hitter, obviously. And Lance Berkman, we had the same agent. And Lance comes up, and he looks at me, and I throw a sinker at him, and he grounds out to second. And I was like, oh. And I looked at the bullpen at Stormy, and he's like, see, sinkers stay in the ballpark. 4 sinkers go into the ballpark. I'm like, and then Lance runs by me, and he goes, did you just throw a sinker at me? And I'm like, I don't know, did it work? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, maybe I did that. I'm like, I tell you, because this guy reports 4 seamers. So I face him the next day. I bring Lance Berkman in, throw him a curveball, throw him a sinker, throw him another curveball, and he yells at me. He's like, throw that 4-seam fastball. He's mad at me for not throwing it. And I'm like, give me some of your $16 a year, I'll throw whatever ball you want, And so then I throw another sinker at him, and he hits it right off the end of the back of first base. And he runs by me, he goes, seriously, you're throwing a sinker now? I'm like, And all of a sudden, that's all I threw for the rest of the year, and I had my best second half. And then I come into San Francisco, and in my 7 years in San Francisco, I threw 1 4-seam fastball. I threw all sinkers and had my best career ever, and I thank David for that. I was like, you literally saved my career. And I just to a point where Buster would quit throwing wouldn't let me throw a curveball. And I look at Buster, I'm like, hey, you know I have a curveball. And he's like, yeah, you should catch it right in my throat because you bounce it 45 feet. And he's like, they can't hit your sinker, just throw your sinker. I'm like, Buster, I said, we gotta throw a curveball. He's like, fine. So we go out there, first pitch, he called curveball. I'd throw it, scud, hit the dirt, he'd block it, he'd look at me, and he'd just sit there and call sinker the rest of the game. Fine, you know? But it was so good because I got to learn. Sometimes you don't always know the path you take. You don't know why your kid gets put on a certain team, or why this coach comes in to coach your kid, or why you want to see certain, because you never know. And that's why you gotta respect all your coaches. Not all coaches talk a certain way, think a certain way. So there might be a pitching coach or a hitting coach or even a little league coach that says the same exact thing the other guy said, but your kid, for whatever, hears it differently because that's related. So you want a bunch of different people talking to you, but you also got to know why you do what you do. And so when I learned my arm slot, why I threw what I threw, I wouldn't allow people to change me a whole lot because I could argue with them. And Rags would talk to me, and Rigetti wouldn't try to change me as much as he wants to know why I'm throwing the way I'm throwing. So I talked to him, and then he'd work with me from there. So it was great. And the one fastball I threw as a Giant, I threw to Upton. Fastball away, four-seamer away, and he hit it off the Jerry Deli train. And I remember looking, and I remember seeing that, and I saw it, and I'm like, holy. And I looked in, and Matt Cain has his hat pulled over his face laughing at me. Because it was so far. It was Oppo. Like, you can't hit an Oppo in San Francisco. And he hit the train. And I was like, oh, man. And then I looked over at AJ Hinch, who was the manager, who was my first catcher in the big leagues. I looked over at him, and he goes, wow. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. So when I walked back to the dugout, Bochy looks at me and he's like, hey. I looked over, he's like, I told you I wanted him to go the other way, but not that far. So I don't throw any more. So from then on, I throw another 4-seam fastball rest of my career.
Well, we obviously know you love playing for Bochy in San Francisco, but certainly rewind that to the moment you actually made the decision to come to San Francisco. And what for you was that defining factor, that thing in your mind that said, I want to go there?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting story. So when I was a free agent in Colorado before Cincinnati signed me, Sabian, they called my agent and he offered me a really low ball deal, right? And it made me mad. And I told my agent, you can tell Brian Sabian, don't ever call me again, I will never sign with that team. And I don't know if you guys are into the Bible or not, but there's this thing in Jonah and the whale where Jonah said, I'm not going there, and God put him in a fish and spit him out on land. You know? So you probably shouldn't ever say you're never going to go somewhere, because I ended up being here for most of my career. So I remember getting mad at him and saying, I'm never going to sign with that guy. He lowballed me. It's a brutal deal. I don't respect Brian Sabian for what he did. And then I become a free agent after Cincinnati, and the first team to call, my agent, Brian Sabian. And he's like, we want to take him to a 2-year deal. And he's like, he's not going to want to do a deal with you. And he's like, why? He's like, well, you insulted him so bad last year. And he was like, well, he didn't pitch. We didn't know what kind of pitcher he was. We didn't know if he was the Denver and Rockies 2007 pitcher or the 2006 pitcher. He was 2 different pitchers, so I can't offer him a deal. He backed it up, so I'll offer him a better deal. And I remember my agent calling me, and I was in my car. I had bad cell service, so I had to figure out where to pull over. And he's like, hey, Giants called and they offered you a 2-year deal. I said, no. He's like, you haven't heard the deal yet. I'm like, I told you I'm never signing with those guys. And he's like, will you listen to the deal first? And I'm like, fine, whatever. And so he told me the deal, and I was like, well, let me think about this for a second. Because I didn't want to, my pride said to say no, but then he's like, listen, I want to be close to my family that live in Washington, right? Because I played Kansas City, not necessarily a bad spot. Kansas City is amazing. My wife's from Kansas City. It's a great town. But, and then Cincinnati, it takes like 17 different planes to get into Cincinnati. You can't get into that place. But so I wanted to be kind of where my family could come see me, play, and it was quick, and I could get home. And so he was like, hey man, this is an hour and 45-minute flight from Spokane, direct. You get a deal, you're on the West Coast, you got the money you wanted, you have the years that you wanted. I don't really know what else to tell you. I can't guarantee you it's some other place. And so I said, okay, I'll take the deal. Sabian called me about 2 days later, and I answered the phone. He's like, hey Jeremy, this is Brian Sabian. And I'm like, hey. He's like, look, I know we got off on the wrong foot last year. I appreciate you willing to negotiate. Here's the skit. Here's what I'm trying to get. Here's the plan. And he goes, but it's because we believe in you. And Sabian and I had a great relationship for my whole career. I love that man. I was at the Hall of Fame ceremony here in San Francisco. I mean, when a GM who has been in that game from the Yankees to the Giants, back to the Yankees, saw all the greats, was a part of signing some of the greatest players in baseball history. And that guy kisses you on the forehead and says, you're like a son to me. Like, you feel it, and you appreciate it. And you're thankful you made the decisions that you did make to come here. And so I was very thankful for that man, the relationships that I have with him.
Well, obviously we know your history here, obviously the 7 years that you've been here. We know the statistics, obviously the third lowest postseason ERA in history, 0.77. Obviously the titles, the playoff games, 2009, 28th place in the MVP voting.
That's right.
Which most people don't know. They didn't know they went down 28.
Yeah.
So apparently they do. So, but let's talk about some of the obviously some of your biggest moments, certainly in 2010, 12, and 2014. But 2010, you guys are in Philadelphia. It's Game 6 in a 2-2 game in the third inning. You're out in the bullpen and you watch Jonathan Sanchez just nail Chase Utley, and both teams meeting by the mound, exchanging recipes, talking about where they're all going to go to dinner afterwards. But you got to stay behind and get warmed up and come into the game. Tell us what your mindset is, what your mentality is, what you're thinking coming into that game in that situation.
So that's one of the times when Boch and I weren't getting along. He had pitched me for I think he pitched me one time in 12 days. And he didn't pitch me in the Atlanta series when two lefties came up. I think it was Hinsky and I can't remember who the other one was. Hit homers to cost us the game. I was warming up both times, they're both lefties. And Boch didn't bring me in, we gave up homers. So him and I were not seeing eye to eye after that. And then in Philly, he didn't pitch me in a couple key situations. And he pitched me in one game that didn't even matter. I think we were down already. And so we got into it a little bit. And I remember we were in Game 6, and we didn't want to face Halladay because we beat him already. You can't beat him twice. That's gonna be tough. So we didn't want to go to Game 7 at Philly, and so we were trying to figure out, I wanted to win this game, and I remember I threw a bullpen. I went up to the bullpen, and I threw as hard as I could, and Rigetti would just stand there and he just watched me, because he knew I was mad at him, so I threw about 15 pitches as hard as I could, just to keep myself ready, and then I threw the ball down at his feet, and I walked out, because I was mad at him. And he just let me do it, and Rag's pretty good about it, he knows I'm upset, and I was just wanting to be in a game that mattered, right? So we get in this 2-2 game, and Sanchez is kind of coming off the rails. He does hit Utley, and I'm warming up, and Ramon Ramirez is warming up. And we get into that, whatever you want to call it, brawl or fake fight that most baseball teams get into. And so I went to run down, and Gardy grabbed me and said, "You can't run down. You're warming up, you're going to this game. This is a perfect opportunity. Keep warming up." And Chase Utley just bought you 5 minutes to warm up. Because I was going to the game and I only had 6 warm-up pitches. And I had to face Ryan Howard, Raul Banez, Jimmy Rollins. It's like Babe Ruth over and over again. I'm not even warm. So I remember warming up, and the fans in Philly, I don't know if anybody else heard me tell the story, but the fans in Philly are terrible. I mean, they say things to you that are not, it's not nice. And there was stuff, they made up a few names, really, it literally hurt my feelings. Like, I was like, oh my, that's a word? And if it is, it really hurt. Like, they just, because I wasn't running into the brawl, so they wanted to let you know that you're a big sissy in their language, you know? So in Philadelphia or whatever, it's not brotherly love. So I remember running in, and I actually was excited to run in because I wanted to get out of the bullpen. But then I remember I was like ticked off at Bochy. So Bochy's waiting for me on the mound, and I'm running in, and I'm trying not to be mad at him. Because he had pitched me, and now this is when you decide to throw me? Like, I'm a scapegoat. All San Francisco's gonna hate me in about 5 minutes if I don't do my job. So I got runners on first and second. And I remember Boch, he put the glove in, he put the ball in my glove, and he held it there for a second, and I tried to pull the glove back, and I looked at him, and he's like, hey, I know you and I are getting along right now. I'm like, hey man, we could go have a date after, but let's not talk about this right here. We don't need therapy in the mountain football game. Like, let's figure it out later. He's like, listen, I saved you for this moment, right here. This is why I'm not pitching. You're the only guy that I believe that can pitch in this situation. You get me out of this, we're going to the World Series. And I looked at him, and he turned around and just walked off, and I was like, okay. Like, so all of a sudden I get this confidence. I'm glad it worked out, but you know, I struck Ryan Howard out, and I got I got two more. I got Jason Worth pop up, and it was just like, and I remember getting out of it, and then Bum came in I think the fifth, and then Lincecum came in, and then Wilson obviously sealed the deal at the end to go to the World Series. But to me, with Boch telling me that and just gave me that, like I said, man, it does not matter what athlete you are. Most of those guys on that field out there in Oracle, they're all insecure. They are. It doesn't matter how cocky they are. Like, they need someone to tell them that they're good enough. This game is super, super hard to play. And when you got 50,000 people in a stadium, 2-3 million people in a city that are all pulling on you to, like, someone give them happiness, it's a lot. And they're trying to feed their family. And they're trying to, like, justify why they get paid what they get paid. Everybody thinks about it. The player, that's what you guys gotta understand too, the player thinks about it. The player out there making $35 million, he's not, you're not the only one that says, is anybody worth $35 million? They think that. They think that. Their agent got them what the market value said they should get, but they question whether they're worth $35 million, when they're over 20 and hitting a $1.10 or have a 5 ERA. They question the same thing. So they gotta have someone tell them that they're good enough. They have to have encouragement. And so when he gave me that, man, and I remember after the game, he said, you know, I remember seeing him literally kiss me on the forehead. That was the first time he kissed me. I was like, hey, that was weird. You know, it was odd. You know, but you know, like for me, it was just that situation where I just having those guys in Bochy tell the media, you know, Jeremy saved us today. It wasn't that I needed that like to be walk around cocky. It was like I needed my manager to let me know that he believed in me, and he did. And I trusted him for the rest of my career. When he put me in the game, I knew that's when I was supposed to be in the game. If he didn't put me in the game, I never pushed because of that situation. And so that was a big moment for me as a player in my career, but also for learning how to trust the manager. So it was awesome.
So fast forward a couple years later, obviously you guys end up winning that series, winning that first World Series there. Fast forward 2 years later, we're in Detroit. You guys are on the precipice again of obviously 2 major comebacks, and obviously you're now 3-0 on the Detroit Tigers. It's Game 4 of the American League Championship Series. You come in after a 3-3 ball game. You've got Prince Fielder, Miguel Cabrera, Delvin Young coming up. You got a home run champion, you got an MVP, you have an All-Star. Is that the kind of thing you're preparing for before that moment? Is that the kind of thing that you're just going to the moment and Buster's just telling you what to do? But you know, what's your focus? What's your preparation in terms of coming into that moment? Are you thinking strength on strength? Are you thinking trying to attack their weakness, and how did you get through it?
So we attacked their weakness for sure, because they had 10 games where they didn't play, right? They had 10 days off, we didn't. We knew they had big holes. Our only saving grace, one, when I come into that game, it is a lot of pressure, but the pressure was off a little bit when you were up 3-0, right? I mean, it's not like if you lose that game, it's over. However, you want to go home. We knew the storms that were coming in that day, or in that night, actually, and if we, after that game, they had like 6 straight days of rain. We wouldn't have played. So it was going to be tough, so we wanted to win that game. And coming in, yes, it was Buster telling me what to do, because I never was allowed to tell him what to do. So it's whatever he called goes. So pretty much, and if you argue with him, he'll come talk to you about it, and then he'll find a way to let you know you're an idiot, which is true, because the guy's super smart. But, for me, it was, I had sprained my ligament in the Cincinnati series in my thumb off a foul ball. And so I was getting Toradol shots to numb my body, so I couldn't feel my thumb. But I was having to try to throw curveballs with a high sprain in my UCL in my thumb. And I remember Rags just saying, hey, you gotta throw a curveball to make sure that they know you can throw one, but only throw a couple, because you gotta save your thumb for your fastball. And so when we struck Prince Fielder out on that curveball, that was probably one of the best curveballs I ever threw. And I remember trying to watch video and wonder how I hit it. And I would be in there sometimes just rewatching the video, like when I'm struggling, I'd rewatch that pitch. And I remember every time Buster or Rags, one of the two would always come into the video when I'm watching that curveball, and they'd start laughing. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? And they're like, dude, you're not trying to figure out how you threw that curveball. Buster's like, I don't know how you do that curveball. Prince Fielder doesn't know how you do that curveball. You don't know, and Rags doesn't know. No one knows, so don't try to figure it out, because I think you just got lucky. I'm like, thanks, Buster. So it was just awesome that I was able to throw it. And then with Cabrera, I threw a split finger that was actually supposed to go left and went right. Well, Cabrera thought it was going to go left too, so he was swinging at it to go left and it went right, so I kind of got lucky there too. It was just in a key moment, but it was awesome because it was just the energy and the competitiveness and just facing those guys and facing the best and being out there and just realizing that sometimes your best stuff isn't because you know what you're doing, you just will it. You're just out there. And that's what some of these kids need to know. Don't overthink it. Just go out there, and when you're at the mound, just compete. Just be like, I'm throwing a strike. This is what I'm throwing. And when you're hitting, go up there and just say, I'm gonna hit the crap out of this ball. Like, just will it sometimes. Because when you get into those moments where you can actually just get competitive, all your athleticism kicks in. All when you start thinking or pitching scared or swinging scared, no one hits well. So you young athletes, you can't be scared. You just gotta go after it. And you almost kind of like, I kind of like just black out in those situations of like, you're in a fight or flight. I've learned that I'm more of a fight guy than a flight guy. So like when you run in, it doesn't matter how you feel. When you're running into that game, it doesn't matter how much pain you're in or if you can see or not see, you're in it. You might as well just compete now. And that's what you young athletes gotta realize too. Every time you get put into a game, you're in it. Don't think about anything else, but just do it. Do your job. Hit that ball. When you get in that box, when you decide to commit to a swing, commit to it. I know a lot of kids at your level, even your age, if you get hit, you're scared to get in the box again. And I talked to a kid that was 12 years old that got hit and he didn't want to get in the box. I'm like, why don't you want to get in the box? He's like, well, because it hit me. Well, how many times have you think you've hit in your life? A lot. How many times have you been hit? Like twice? Odds are you're probably not going to get hit. So don't think you're going to get hit. You hit the ball. Don't be scared. Go after it. It's part of the game. Like, just black out a little bit, man, and just compete and believe in yourself. I mean, just go out there. That's what we do. Even at professional, we don't do anything different than what you should be doing. We just do it at a different level. We do the same thing. We think the same way. I want you guys to think that same way.
Well, you end up succeeding, your team ends up succeeding. Kind of fast forward, kind of 2 more years later, you're at the final chapter of your career, kind of towards at the end there, you get a chance to go back to Kansas City, back to the place where you said you lost your joy for the game, and now you get to go there and the ultimate, the biggest stage, the biggest moment, Game 7 of the World Series, in this place where you lost the joy for the game, and now you're back, and obviously you're a different person. You changed as a ball player, you changed as a person. What was that like to be in that moment, in that place, in a place that held something that maybe was less than ideal for you as a person, as a player, but to be able to be on that stage in that moment and to have the opportunity to reach the highest pinnacle, not only for your team, but even for yourself, personally and professionally?
That was a crazy game. I talked about the double play obviously earlier on it. The craziest part was before I came into that game. So Bochy sits me down before the game. So one, we love Casilla. He's awesome. But Bochy had this big meeting, and he always does these like Gladiator or Braveheart meetings. Like when Bochy wants to pump you up and plays like Gladiator, where the guy's getting his guts ripped out, yelling freedom, and you're like, he's like, guys, we need to have like Braveheart tenacity, and we're like, oh my gosh, So he do all these things and have some fun stuff. So Bochy gave this big speech about Game 7, and Casilla stands up. He's like, I got something to say. And we're like, all right. So he's like, God told me we're going to win the World Series in spring training. Everybody's like, and I look at everybody, and everybody looks at me, and I'm like, okay, Casilla, well, hopefully we win today. That's kind of weird, He's like, no, give me a drink, we're going to win. Okay, thanks, Casilla. And then he sits down, and Boch is like, Affeldt, I need to see me in my office. I'm like, why am I getting in trouble? So the meeting's over. Everybody's kind of sitting around looking like they don't know what to do with that situation. And we go into Bochy's office, and he's like, all right, I'm just trying to prepare you. He's like, according to Casilla, we've already won the World Series, but I need to prepare accordingly. I'm like, okay. And so he's like, here's the deal, Hudson's old. And I'm like, yeah, he is. He's like, he's tired, he's old. I don't know if he's going to give us 1 inning or 5 innings. I have no idea, but as soon as he struggles, he's out. And I'm like, all right. He's like, I had 2 knee braces on, because I was pitching knee braces. My kid blew up both my knees. It's freaking giant. So I got knee braces on. He's like, so put your knee braces on and whatever chemical heat you gotta have on to feel good. So we had to put on chemical heat so our body would feel hot. So I put this stuff called atomic balm on. And when you sweat, it gets hotter, right? So you put it on early, and then as you go on, it's very painful, but it takes your mind off stuff. So he's like, put all that stuff on. I need you to get ready to go right away. I'm like, all right. So I put all this stuff on, I get myself ready, and the trainers are stretching me early, and Bum's down there with us, because he basically said, the Royals have said they don't think they're going to face Bum, because he threw a CG 2 days ago, and they all said, thankfully, we're not going to see that guy again. Well, I talked to Bum, and he said he feels good, so they're going to see him tonight. And I'm like, that's actually a good play. Yep. He's like, so they're going to see him, and so I need you to get the ball, whatever inning you come in, you got to get the ball to the 5th. Bum said he's going to run with it. He can throw the 5th. He's ready to go. It's his bullpen day. He's going to run with it. So I'm like, all right. So we get down there, and it starts to unravel on the second day. And all of a sudden the phone rings. And I'm not going to say the names, because I'm trying to protect my teammates. But it's a funny story, I just want to say that. So calls down, Boch goes, get Jamie Bob up. Okay? Well, Jamie Bob doesn't have his jersey on, nor does he have his cleats. Because he didn't think he was going to be pitching that early. So I look over, and I'm like, what? So now we're trying to figure out how to get the clubby to run his jersey out, but there's no tunnel in Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City, so you have to run across the field. So we're trying to get the clubby to run his jersey across the field, which would kind of show that we're not very prepared. Because we got a jersey being run out there. And then Jimmy Bob Jr. takes his cleats off and throws it at Jimmy Bob to to put his cleats on, see his cleats on. Well, then Boach calls down and says, get Jimmy Bob Jr. up. Problem is, Jimmy Bob's got Jimmy Bob's cleats on. And this is the second inning, game 7. It is a madhouse now. Like, we don't know what's going on. So finally, I look over at Billy Hayes and I'm like, get up. And Billy Hayes, our other bullpen catcher, right? He's one of the coaches. I'm like, get up. He's like, why? I'm like, I'm going to warm up. He's like, they didn't call you into the game. I'm like, do you trust these two guys in the game? It's game 7. Now, one's got the other person's cleats on, and one of them a jerk. And Billy's like, that's a good point. I'm like, yeah. So I jump up, and I start warming up. And Gardy looks at me and goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm warming up. I'm going in this game, because I don't trust any of these guys to do it. I'm going in the game. I'm ready. I'm going in. Bum. Quit flipping the ball, because Bum was nervous, because he's a starter. Now he has to be a reliever, so now he's all pain. He's like nervous. So he's just flipping the ball, and he's making everybody nervous. I said, quit flipping the ball, it's ready to go in the 5th. So I started warming up, and then Boach, I kind of did a double take, because he went out for his first visit to slow the game down. He did a double take and sees me down there. And next thing you know, Boach comes down, and he looks at Rags, and he goes, what's Affeldt doing up? Rags goes, well, I don't know, I thought you got him up. And Boach was telling me this after the game, that's how I know what happened. So then Boach goes, well, go slow the game down and give him some time to warm up, because if he's going to warm himself up, he's going in the game. So Rags goes out there, and he slow walks out there to talk to Timmy, or to Hudson, and next thing you know, he's kind of staring at me like he doesn't really know what's going on. So then Boach calls down and says, Affeldt's in the game. So I go running in the game, and they gotta open the gate, and you gotta make the hoopla happen, right? So you gotta wait for the camera guy to run out there so he can get the big, like, you know, crescendo music as the reliever comes in the game for the World Series and comes through the gate, you know, so you have to do all this weird stuff. So you stand there and wait for the camera guy. And Gardy looked at me and goes, did you just put yourself into game 7? I was like, yeah. And he goes, you were crazy. So I just run in the game. So then I can't see on top of it. I didn't tell anybody that. And so we come in, and we're there, and I remember Boach. So I come after after the double play. I remember I was sitting there, and I'm putting these eye drops in my eyes. I'm trying to figure out how to get my vision correct. And Buster comes down because I didn't want to sit with all the energy. I didn't mind it, but I didn't want to sit in the dugout. I was trying to stay focused because I couldn't see. So I'm like, I gotta focus on just, my muscle memory is just allowing me to throw 60 feet 6 inches. That's all it is. It just shows you how important it is to repeat your delivery. Because in practice all the time. Because I was just trying to throw to an area. And I'm sitting down there, and I was trying to keep myself from being overly anxious. So I was just trying to stay calm. So I was sitting in the tunnel. And then they would say, hey, there's 2 outs or whatever, and then I'd run back up and go again. And Buster comes down, he gets his helmet. He's gonna hit, and he looks at me, he's like, hey, you all right? I'm like, yeah, I can't see. He's like, what? And I'm like, well, I can see, but I'm seeing it to you. So I was trying to explain it to him. And he's just looking at me the whole time. And Buster doesn't really get all that excited, so he just stares at me. And he's like, well, we gotta tell Boach. I'm like, well, no. Go ahead. You better get the defibrillator too, so you're gonna jump start his heart, because he ain't gonna be ready to make a move. So Buster's like shaking his head, and he runs out there, and we go out to warm up, and I remember my first pitch goes like 52 feet in the ground. And Buster looks at me, my warm-up pitch, he takes his mask off, and I said, I guess wrong. And I guess wrong, Buster, just sit back there and catch. Like, I didn't ask you to tell me where my pitch went, just sit back there. So he sits back there, and we get them to the warm-ups, and Buster's just shaking his head because he's mad. Because he's like looking in the dugout, he's looking at, he's just trying to figure out what's going on. So calls curveball to Gordon, hit him in the back. Told him I guess wrong. And Buster's like, oh my gosh. Like, he's sweating. So then Perez hits a double play ball. And I'm like, oh, I got another double play. It's awesome. I don't know how much longer I got. And then I face Billy Butler, and it's like a 10-pitch at bat. And I'm throwing the kitchen sink out. I honestly, I was thinking about throwing rosin back. He was swinging at everything and hitting it. So I'm like, I'll choose some other object to And so I was fighting him, and I throw this split, and he grounds out the short, and to end the fourth inning. And I walk off, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know how much more time. Like, and I kind of took a peek down at the bullpen to see if Bum was warming up, because I'm like, I don't know how much I got. So I go sit down, and Bosch usually shakes your hand, says, hey, you're done, good job. Well, he didn't shake my hand, and I'm like, oh boy, for another one. So I sit down, I'm sitting next to Buster, and I look over at Buster, and Buster's like, just takes his helmet off, and he just stares at me, and I look over at him, and I'm like, man, good thing I saw the right one on the last guy. And he's like, bro, quit messing with me. I'm like, I'm really not. He's like, man, this isn't good. And then Bush looked over at me and he's like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm fine. And Buster's like, he just looks over at me like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill you. And so I'm just sitting there and he's like, nah, Bump's warming up, you're done. And Buster's like, he yells, goes, thank God. And Bush looks back at me and I'm like, I don't know, Buster's being Buster. And I look over at Buster, he's like, bro, there's no way we're getting through another inning. I don't know how you got through those other ones. And we did, and it was awesome. But it was the best thing about it. Someone interviewed me after the game and says, you know, they wanted to know all about the game. And I said, I don't care about the game. And they said, but you're back in Kansas City, like this is your third. And I said, yeah. I said, this is the day that my third son gets a ring. I said, because my oldest was, so all three of the boys were born on World Series years. Well, my oldest was born in 2007 when we lost, so he has a loser ring. Right? So you get the national championship ring when you get whenever you get an American League or National Championship ring, that means you've lost the World Series, so it's a loser ring, right? So he has a loser ring, so now he gets, I said, all I care about is like the third boy got a world championship ring that they get, you know? And so that was the favorite thing, full circle of life for me, of coming up with the Royals, hating the game, my first time ever back in Kansas City, Kauffman Stadium, and then I walk off as a champion, and they gave me the win for Game 7, and my third son has an now world championship ring. It goes to him, you know? So it was just such a cool, overall great experience, and that's why in 2015 it was my last year. It's because I wanted to fulfill my contract, but I really felt like 2014 that was it. I didn't have to play more. I could have played more, but there's no better circle of life in a story. You can't write a script better than that, you know. So that's kind of where it was like, it's it. I need to be done and walk away. So that's kind of what happened there.
Pretty incredible way to end your run here. And your run in San Francisco, and obviously you're here now, connected now, and so we got to raffle and some other photo stuff to do, but we want to just thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing not just your baseball abilities and your stories, but just sharing your life. Because I think this is all a big part of life, and certainly I think we can all take from your experiences and what you've done and what you've experienced and what you've been through, and hopefully apply it to ourselves, apply it to our kids' lives, and our kids who are going through that journey, or at least early on in that journey themselves. So whether as athletes, as students, as people. So just wonderful themes, wonderful threads that go through that really define the fact that you really persevered through and really found out what was on the other side, right? Went through the storm and found out what was on the other side. That was glorious, it was magical, and it was had a very championship quality to it. So thank you very much for being here.